So we have a brand new Batman movie, and with it, a brand new Batman. That means there's currently over 50 years worth of theatrical Batman. So today we're gonna stop and rank all 7 theatrical live-action Batman from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Batman. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. As we go into this, I'm basing my ranking based off the characterization of both Batman and Bruce Wayne, the character arc, the physicality, and how memorable and iconic are they. There's nothing magic about this, it's just my opinions, and that's what I'm looking at, and let's get started. Easily coming in last place, George Clooney in Batman and Robin. For what it's worth, in the right movie, I don't think George Clooney would be a bad pick. If you just look at George Clooney the person, clearly he can play rich playboy very well. He has the right look to play Bruce Wayne, and if you've seen From Dusk Till Dawn, you know he has a dark edge to him.
Do you want this little girl to die, or that little girl, or yourself, or your bosom buddy with the badge? Now, I don't want to do it.
He can do action, and so I think he had the potential to be a decent Batman in the right movie. He is definitely not in the right movie, though, and instead ended up in Joel Schumacher's live-action Batman cartoon that was called Batman and Robin, bat nipples and all. Now, of course, it's easy to superficially pick on all the campiness of the film, but it's also a movie that doesn't really have much to do with Bruce Wayne and Batman's arc in the film. It's much more interested in the villains, with Batgirl, with Alfred. There's some moments of really bad acting. There's just nothing here that feels true to either Bruce Wayne or Batman. And unfortunately, that's what George Clooney got stuck with. There's just nothing here for him to do with it, so he's delivering goofy lines about his Bat credit card.
$7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
And he's fighting over Poison Ivy in these slapstick, over-the-top, wired-to-death action sequences that look like ice-capades. It's just this weird Joel Schumacher thing that George Clooney has been apologizing for the last 25 years.
Didn't you apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin?
I always apologize for Batman. But, you know, I thought at the time this was going to be a very good career move. It wasn't.
Next up, Val Kilmer from Batman Forever. Now, to be perfectly clear, there's a very big jump between George Clooney and Val Kilmer. While I'm not a big fan of this version of Batman, it is a dramatic improvement, and of that original 4 films, Batman films from the 80s and 90s, this is the one with the most Batman and Bruce Wayne centric story, where he's having a bit of an existential crisis. He's seeing a counselor. He's processing through his understanding of his childhood and trying to decide if he wants to be Bruce Wayne or Batman. So there actually is a little bit of a story in there, an exploration of the character, much more so than you saw in the Michael Keaton films or, of course, the George Clooney film. But at the end of the day, I have just never thought that Val Kilmer was a very good fit. As Batman, of course, it's so Joel Schumacher-ified, where he's like,
You're trying to get under my cape, Doctor?
A girl can't live by psychoses alone.
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through.
all of that stuff never makes this feel like I'm watching Batman. It feels like I'm watching this strange Val Kilmer cartoon. So whether doing Batman or Bruce Wayne, he just never gives off the right energy. And for like over 25 years, I've been trying to figure out exactly what that is, and I've never pinpointed exactly what it is about the kind of persona that he naturally kind of gives off. And maybe it is that he has so much of that Iceman in him, that bro fighter pilot, that's simply not Bruce Wayne.
That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe. I don't like you because you're dangerous.
That's right.
When he's being Bruce Wayne, when he's being the Dark Knight, it just doesn't naturally come off like this character with this very dark, mysterious past, because that's just not his strong suit. So I just kind of always have felt that he was miscast, even in this Joel Schumacher film. Next up, Adam West from Batman 66. Now, to state the obvious, this is a very different version of The Dark Knight, as this was an intentionally campy version of the character from a time period when in the comics, Batman was presented in a much more comedic fashion and not as the Dark Knight that we know and love from the last 30 years. And so I'm evaluating it in terms of that. It's an intentionally comedic version of the character. It's almost self-parody.
Hand me down the shark repellent bat spray.
And Adam West does that so well. He does the deadpan. He delivers these ridiculous, silly lines with the utmost sincerity and earnestness that makes them really funny.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Now, as this is based off the theatrical Batman, I'm just looking at the Batman 66 film. He's not given a big character arc. There's not a bunch of emoting that he does, even though he does get a little bit sad at the end when he realizes that Miss Kitka can't be a part of his life. If you compare this version to these much more complex characterizations from the last 20 years, it obviously seems very silly. But that's the point. It's supposed to be a silly, campy version of the character that's just supposed to be amusing. And of course, this is an iconic version of the character, though a simplistic one. So I don't think it's a top-notch version, but I think it's a very good version of what they were trying to do at the time. In fourth place, Michael Keaton from Batman and Batman Returns, and apparently the DCEU in the near future. Now, this is the Batman of my childhood. This film and this portrayal of Batman was a huge part of my childhood. But at the time, I only had Christopher Reeve's Superman and Michael Keaton's Batman. And as the decades have passed and we've gotten more and more comic book movies and more renditions of Batman, I think the flaws of this version have become more and more clear. A big part of that is that Tim Burton in both of his films didn't seem very interested in Batman. In both movies, he makes an appearance in the cold open where Batman takes out whatever crime's being committed. And then from there, he kind of disappears for the next 25 minutes while the movies set up all of the villains and plot lines. But we're not following Batman through the setup of the plot.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What?
Because it's not very interested in him. He doesn't get character arcs. He doesn't really grow and change as a character. He just reacts to what's happening. And I think Michael Keaton does a good job of being this mysterious, brooding version of Bruce Wayne. When he's in the costume, it's iconic and he gets plenty of awesome looking shots. Looks imposing and intimidating in the suit, despite the fact that he's not the biggest guy out there. But because the movies don't explore the character much, they don't see him grow and change, it's difficult to say that this is a top-notch version of the character. It was important for cinema. It was important for me as a person. But I can't say, looking back on it now, that this is this great, faithful version of Batman. I mean, he's a version of Batman that on multiple occasions kills people by planting bombs on them, knocking them off buildings, torching them with the Batmobile. And in which case, as much as I love this version of the character, because for nostalgic reasons, I also don't think it is a great version of the character. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the live-action theatrical Batman. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And with the release of the Batman, I'm doing tons and tons of Batman content. I've already gone back and reviewed each of the Batman movies I hadn't previously reviewed, and over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do all the Batman rankings, the final battles, the villains, all of that fun stuff, and I've already ranked the movies. You can check that all out right up here if you've enjoyed this video. In third place, Robert Pattinson in The Batman. This is the version of the character that I've been waiting to see for a very long time. For all the great things that other versions of Batman have done, we haven't really seen him as the world's greatest detective, and that's what this movie and this version of the character set out to do. It is absolutely a detective story with Batman front and center, working this investigation with Gordon, with Catwoman.
You got a lot of cats.
I have a thing about strays.
Working through riddles and ciphers and teaming up with Alfred to figure things out. This is one of the pieces that I feel was missing, and we finally got it in this movie. Other side to it is that this is a very dark and brooding Batman that is early in his career. He isn't as matured, and so he's just focused on the vengeance side of what he's doing and not the heroic side. It tells this other origin story about his thinking about the mission that he's on and developing into a much more holistic, fleshed out character. And that also leads to the fact that when he gets into action, he's a vicious, vicious Batman that is hurting criminals, striking fear in them. Because he's not a hero yet, he's also striking fear in the people of Gotham.
I'm vengeance.
And then in the suit, Robert Pattinson is just able to communicate so much with his eyes, his physicality, his mouth, while still being a very stoic version of the character. Now, what holds this one back a little bit for me is the version of Bruce Wayne isn't very developed yet. And that's built into the plot that Bruce Wayne essentially doesn't exist.
Your family has a history of philanthropy, but as far as I can tell, you're not doing anything.
He is fully in Batman mode all the time. He's all about the mission. He's fully consumed by that. There is no duality. There is no other personality. It's just the Batman and his mission. And one of the things he learns in this film is the importance of having that other side. But it's not really there yet. So I feel like it's not a fully developed version of the character. This could quickly change. They do a sequel, which I'm sure is coming. Easily, they could fix what I think is incomplete about this version, the second one, and he moves up a spot or two. Our runner-up, Batfleck from Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Here, Ben Affleck and Zack Snyder crafted this version of Batman heavily influenced by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight. It's an older Batman, it's a more cynical Batman, and his starting point at the beginning of Batman v Superman is a version of the character that's kind of been driven mad by the fact that he's seen so much destruction caused by Superman, and he just is seeing red. He just sees a threat and has to rediscover his humanity and discover the hero throughout the course of that film. And by the end of it, realizes he's made a horrible mistake that he has to make right. And then Zack Snyder's Justice League is all about his journey to try and be the hero again and fix the mistake he made in misreading who Superman was. This is by far the most physical Batman we've ever seen, that he just looks like an absolute tank. Some people have criticized this look for Batman, but it's straight out of The Dark Knight Returns, the look they were going for. And when he's in action, he's probably the most agile Batman we've ever had, while being the bulkiest, the strongest, the toughest. Of course, the warehouse sequence in Batman v Superman is a standout as just the best Batman live-action fight scene that we have ever had. And because he is the version of the character that pulled together the Justice League,
I don't care how many demons he's fought and how many hells, he's never fought us. Not us united.
He's the one that comes off the most comic booky in a holistic sense. All the other Batman essentially exist in these pocket universes where maybe there's subtle references to the rest of the DC universe, but they don't actually interact with those characters, whereas this Batman actually talks to Superman, Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg. It's a full DC universe that he lives in, while we get to see a mature Batman that is deeply flawed, realizes his mistakes, and changes all along the way. Now, I'm not crazy about the fact that he goes full-blown Punisher mode in Batman v Superman and has machine guns on his Batmobile and is killing people left and right. But for me, I really dug this version of the character, and I think it's a tragedy that we never got a Batfleck film from Oscar-winning screenwriter Ben Affleck, who also directed a Best Picture. That's unfortunate. That would have been a special film, I think. But coming in first place is Christian Bale in the Dark Knight Trilogy. Here we see a full hero's journey for this version of Bruce Wayne and Batman, where we see before he became Batman, we see the training of how he became Batman, we see him in his prime, defeating some of the classic rogues gallery, in particular Joker, and then we see him as an aged, broken version of the character, trying to close out the mission that he had for the city and try and save the city that he loves so much.
I'm Batman.
Likewise, it's a version that understands that Bruce Wayne is this complicated person that has the public persona of the playboy to throw people off. He is Bruce Wayne, the person that Alfred and Lucius knows, and then there's Batman, this persona that goes out and fights crime, and it shows you each of those and has all of them kind of have their own kind of mini journey in it. Along the way, Christopher Nolan puts little moments of emotion, of payoff for the journey that Bruce Wayne is on as he's trying to process through this mission that he's on. This version of the character has been so developed that he matters to the people around him. And that's why I think this is easily the best version. It's a fleshed out character with relationships to a city, with a mission, and relationships to other people that care about him. There's emotional payoff. There's a hero's journey. People nitpick the Batman voice. I don't really care that the Batman voice gets over the top as you go into it. In general, I think without question, this is the most holistic version of the character with the fullest arc that actually had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a compelling character at its center that we spent time with, saw him grow and change and become more than just a man. He became a symbol for his city and was able to save it at the end of the day. So Christian Bale in the Dark Knight Trilogy comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got more like it. You can check out my reviews of the theatrically released Batman movies right over there. You can check out my other Batman rankings right down there. And you can see my ranking of the DC animated universe continuity down below, a bunch of those animated films that they put out over the last decade. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.